Gear up as Cash Miller and a team of accomplished guests steer you on an enlightening voyage filled with valuable tips, fresh insights, and effective strategies. Welcome to Marketing Masters, the Agency Power Show.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cash Miller. I'm your host today. I'm the CEO of Titan Digital. And with me today, I've got Melissa Zehner of The Content Market. Melissa, thank you for joining us today. Take a moment, introduce yourself. What do you do?
Thank you so much for having me today. I am a fractional content marketing leader. I started my business last year servicing B2B startups. Prior to that, I was in-house or at agencies for about 13 years doing exactly the same thing.
Okay, so let's go in for a second. So what does it really mean? So, describe actually how you work with companies. So we have a good idea for the audience, like what do you do? If I hired you, what would you be doing for me?
So a fractional content marketing leader is a content marketing leader that you get for a fraction of the time and the price. So we've heard the term fractional COO or CMO previously. I do something very similar. A lot of startups, when they first start investing in content, can't afford a full-time headcount. So they bring me in and I'm the person fully owning and advocating for the content marketing program. So that's everything from building the content marketing program from the ground up, partnering with dev, design, UX, PR, any other channels that we may need for implementation. And then also either hiring and giving your team the roadmap to move forward, or acting as the point of contact who really coaches and grows those employees over time as you're still scaling the program.
Okay, great. And so you are like the perfect person to be talking to today, because we're going to be covering like AI and how it's affecting content marketing. And it's AI right now, Chat GPT, everything. It's like everybody's jumping on the bandwagon of all the positives, all these things they think it can do and stuff, and everybody's experimenting. But I got a feeling you have some negatives, some things that it cannot actually do for you. And so we want to be able to, I want to spend some time dispelling some of the myths that are starting to kind of, like develop on their own, because everybody's like really hyped up. So what are you seeing, when it comes to content and how people are starting to use it from AI and some of the problems you might be running into and stuff, because I'm sure the people you work with are asking, how do we incorporate this, if we can? So what are you seeing on your front?
Everybody is very excited about AI. I think there's a lot of limited understanding, especially for the people who aren't deeply embedded in the tools and using them on a regular basis. So we've seen both ends of the spectrum. We've seen people that think it's a creepy robot and there's no way that they would use it. We've also seen organizations like BuzzFeed who just say, okay, we're going to lay off our entire team and we're just going to have a robot writing the content, right? So there's definitely a spectrum of openness to it. I think the correct approach probably lies somewhere in the middle, as most things do, which is using it in a balanced way, but also in a way that makes sense for your organization. So there's a lot of different ways that it can support content, right? I think the incorrect way, as an example, would be someone who's just using it to write all of their content and essentially copy pasting whatever something like Chat GPT spits out. There are other tools that will help you refine your content or more easily edit videos or photos. And so there are tasks and activities for marketers that used to take weeks or hours that are now whittled down to a very short time frame. So anywhere you can use it to really improve your efficiency is obviously something that is a positive that we want to keep doing. Some of my hesitancy about AI comes with people that are just looking at it as sort of this one hit wonder that's just going to fix everything. And so they're handing off most of their program or even their strategy to different AI tools and then expecting the same results. Chances are, if you don't have a lot of human interaction in the process and you're not working in partnership with those AI tools, you're not really going to see strong results.
Yeah. You're right about, that. I think, because one of the things that, like, as an agency, we've been dealing with it some too, because like, how do you incorporate it? What's like too much and such? Um, you know, and what we're seeing is like they say it can't totally replace anybody because, for one, and this goes to not just content writing, but like design development stuff, because one of the big headlines is always it's been like, hey, it can code on an entire website, and I build a lot of websites, and I know like that's not actually the case, because if you don't know what to actually do with what it spits out or how to modify, it's not really going to do you any good, because anybody can put the right can put a prompt in, but it doesn't mean it can get the right output and stuff. And you need, people that are trained for these things. They got to understand content, so maybe, yes, it can be an assistant. It can help be more efficient, but, it's going to have a problem, I think, on the, like say, if you don't have somebody trained to actually tell it what to do, how is it going to give you what you need? You know, I heard of a agency. There's a really large one called WPP, and they own a bunch of other agencies. And they've actually partnered with a company called NVIDIA to incorporate like AI into everything they do, because they do like thousands and thousands of ad iterations, and they're going to have the AI do a bunch of the ads themselves and itself and generate them. All the different iterations instead of all the people that it would take, to do that. So where do you see, okay, if you were working with a client, they said, okay, how do we incorporate, or how would you approach you know incorporating AI, and what would you stay away from because of the limitations? If you said, okay, I'm going to have to work with this, what do I do, but what do I not do because of the problems it can cause?
The quickest, easiest way to embed AI and start seeing some results is to treat AI like an intern. So if you think of all of those activities that you may delegate to an intern, that's a perfect activity for AI. Anything that has to do with ideation, outlining, brief creation, additional research, those are activities you may have an intern or someone in a support role doing. Those are activities that can be done very well with the level of AI functionality that we have right now. What I would caution anyone against is using AI to craft your strategy, your messaging, anything that would differentiate your brand. So, the human element and the human touch is still very strong. And there are parts of humanity that a robot is never going to be able to replicate. It's not going to be able to understand your target audience, the nuances of the product and services that you provide, your messaging, and what really makes you distinct in the market the way that you do. Right. The
Right.
same way we say, like, the founder is always the best salesman of the business, the founder closes the most deals. It's
Hmm.
because they know the business the best. Right. So it's the same thing with marketing. The people who understand the business and the audience the best should be the people that are really making the decisions that are driving the direction of the marketing program. So keep those strategy pieces really close and make sure that you're still the person driving the machine. And then what you want to do is really leverage AI to put in those efficiencies that we talked about and really act as a support role. So, can it accelerate your progress once you've picked the direction that you're going in? Absolutely, right? But you need to make it clear that you're still essentially piloting the program.
Okay. So I know you've been testing different things when it comes to AI. What have you seen is like in some of the tests you've done and the ways you've tried to use the different AI programs and stuff? What are the things that you're running into? Because like we've done some tests, for ourselves, and there are certain things that it is like real it struggles with, right?
Mhm.
What kind of struggles have you seen when you've like said, hey, can it do this? Different things. Let's say, have you done some things along those lines?
I have. I've done a lot of testing, especially with ChatGPT. So, one of the things that a tool like ChatGPT really struggles with is something we call sentiment analysis. That is understanding a mood or a tone.
Hmm.
We as human beings are really good at this, right? They've done all of these studies, and we can see micro expressions or changes in, the slight gaze of someone's eye focus, right? Their line of sight. So we're very in tune and picking this up with other human beings. The same thing goes for the written word or even a video. We typically can tell whether someone is skeptical or excited or angry because we're very used to identifying these emotions. This is how we navigate relationships with each other. So if you think about that in terms of how that would parlay into messaging for your content marketing program, ChatGPT is particularly bad at that. If you give it a passage and you ask it to identify what sort of mood someone might be in, it can't tell you. It really has
Hmm.
no idea. And so there's still this element of emotion that's missing, which is why a lot of people say it's really easy to spot the content that people are copy pasting from Chat GPT. It's because it looks very robotic, right? And so
Yeah.
we pick up on that intuitively, even if we're not super conscious of it at the time. So that's one of the big downsides. There are some others if you want to hear them.
Yeah, well, on that point, because we've done some stuff, internally where we've been testing different things, and like I'm working on a course for SEO and such, that where I'm designing it, and so we've experimented, of what it could actually write and what it can't, and the tone is different. Like everything what you mentioned, robotic, right? There was certain wording and the way it said thing, it made sense, but some of it just kind of goes over over your head, right? It becomes like too technical or too sounds like you're in a classroom, something like that. And it's like you're trying to bring it like the way I'm trying to write what I'm doing is bring it the more down to earth. It's understandable. I'm not using a bunch of like weird terms you don't use, hear a lot in daily life and stuff, so and I know you can say, okay, write it like it's, a 10th grader, okay, or a 7th grader or whatever. It's not that great at that. It's you know, it can kind of dumb it down when it, dumb itself down or whatever, but it does struggle with that. What's some of the other things though that you're seeing that it's having issue with?
It definitely, you've probably done this too if you're trying to prompt it and you're not really getting what you want and you keep adjusting your prompt, trying to nudge it in
Hmm.
the direction. It almost gets to a point where it has sort of a one track mind. And so, one of my big concerns is duplicate content. There are people that are literally just copy pasting information from Chat GPT. So, if you're
Hmm.
feeding it in keywords or topics you want to rank for, copy pasting that as a blog on your site, and you have people you're competing with in the SERPs doing the exact same thing, you guys all have duplicate content. So, one of my early experiences was feeding it prompts that were related, but very different in terms of the questions I was asking or the information I was seeking. And it would spit out verbatim the exact same response,
Hmm.
word for word. So
Oh yeah.
imagine all of these people going in and feeding it a prompt and not being very skilled at giving it a prompt and then copying and pasting it on their website. And then you've got duplicate content that, 100, 200 other people have. Then you're wondering why you're not ranking. So, that's one of the
Yeah.
big fallouts for content marketing is a lot of people think that this is this amazing replacement for copywriters or content marketers. And I greatly encourage those people to look at the results that they're getting and then
Hmm.
tell me if it's a replacement because yes, it may be free and it may be faster, but if it's not helping you get traffic and convert that traffic, is it really serving you and serving your business? Probably not, right? And then there's some level of over reliance too. So
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast recently, and someone was saying, they'd leverage Chat GPT and a bunch of AI tools to craft different elements of the strategy. Then they're presenting it to the C-suite, and the
Hmm.
C-suite starts asking them questions. And now they have a problem because when someone is saying, "Walk me through your line of thought for this third point here,
Yeah.
how did you
There
arrive
is
there?"
none.
Right? They weren't
Yeah.
able to do it. Like, what are you gonna say?
Right.
"Hang on, let me type it into Chat GPT and see why
Hmm.
why we made that decision." So that's a
Yeah.
perfect example of what I said earlier, which is do not outsource the strategy. Like, you should be owning the
Right.
strategy, and you should be able to walk someone through that as many times as they need to. Do not over rely on the tool and let it make really important decisions for you.
Yeah, no, that's key. Like the strategy itself. That's a great example. Yeah, that they actually go into the meeting and they're like, "Okay, so what was your line of think, your thought process and stuff?" And then it's like, "Okay, well, let me ask chat what its thought process was, when it did it." It's like cuz you can't substitute that stuff. That's the thing. That's why companies have strategists and stuff that they work out. What is it we're going to do for this campaign, and what whether it's ads you're going to run or content you're going to create and stuff. And it's like if they don't have something like to really grasp, like you've got to be able to put it together. Chat is going to help you get some of it done quicker, if you're writing specific types of content and stuff. And I can see it help, I I think I had a conversation with somebody and we talked about technical content, and it's like, yes, it can draw on certain things, but some services, because as an agency, we've done a lot of blog writing for people, and I always hate really highly technical stuff. We try to stay away from it because you have to know that product or service or whatever it is that that company's offering so in depth. And it is really hard. Like, you get a zillion revisions because they know it better than you're ever going to be able to know it. So if you're struggling, to be able to understand it and be able to, put it into words for what they're doing. How is chat? I know it's an AI. Great. It's going to draw on some different sources, but some of these things you can't do that. It's not going to have anything to draw on, especially in industries that are more obscure and stuff. They're not, really mainstream and easy. Like I say, it's one thing to write a landscaper blog or something like that, but it's going to be a whole nother thing, to write something for a highly technical industry. Now,
Yes. It's also not going to write something very unique or forward thinking. So, a lot of these tools are scraping what's already out there, and they don't have the ability to take two disparate topics or themes and see the connection the way a human being would, right?
yeah,
So, especially if you're in an industry where you're really trying to position yourself as a thought leader and look at forecasts or trends, you're not going to get something like that from an AI tool. That's going to need to come from your expertise and your intuition on what is coming up in the industry. And that's how you have a really strong point of view or a really unique perspective that someone else isn't bringing to the table, right? So, especially in terms of thought leadership content, I would definitely encourage you to just talk as yourself
hmm
versus letting chat gpt spin up all of those conversational nuggets for you, because you're just going to get something that feels a little recycled and generic.
yeah. Let me go down this train of thought for a second, because in the case of like chat and stuff, it can take, we've got certain tools. If I speak it all, right, then it can take it, it can, basically type the whole thing out for you, but then it can clean it up. What do you think about, how it could help you? So if I'm that really technical person, for in my service and stuff, but I don't know how to actually say this stuff, how to write it, because we run into that a lot. Like, we read a lot of website content and stuff, and people don't know what to say about their own businesses. It's quite often, that happens. So what if you took somebody that's like highly technical, but they're not really going to be great at explaining this if they had to type it all out and such, but now you hook them up with GPT or something, so you let it do the interpretation. So it's going to take you down verbatim, but then it's going to kind of convert it, so it's going to make it more readable. So what do you think about, companies or whatnot kind of going that along, down that route as far as using it as like an assistant for those more highly technical industries?
I think that's actually one of the better uses for AI tools. And we saw this in previous generations of AI tools. So, what you're describing sounds very much like something Grammarly or Hemingway would do, where it's going in there and it's cleaning it up based on what we know about grammar and punctuation and reading
hmm
comprehension. So, if you are trying to take technical ideas and distill them down to layman's terms so they're more understandable for a broad audience, that's a great use of the tool. And that is exactly how it can be used in a really effective way, and especially for non-writers, right? That's what I'm trying to emphasize is copywriters and content marketers are very keen at recognizing good writing. There are a lot of people out there that are very excited about chat gpt writing something for them, but what it's spitting out is not really that great, right? So you always want to make sure that you're doing that final sweep the way an editor would, and correcting anything that may feel off base or that doesn't align with your messaging, your product, whatever it is. So, Chat GPT or a similar tool should never be the final draft. It should be your first draft, if anything.
Let me ask you, because you mentioned Grammarly for a second. I've heard multiple times that ChatGPT is actually a better at grammar than Grammarly. Do you find that to actually be the case?
I don't use either on a regular basis, but that Grammarly gripe has been sung far and wide in the content world. That's not the first time I've heard that. So
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if ChatGPT does it better, because I think the technology behind ChatGPT is a little more advanced. So that
Okay.
very much could be accurate. I have the luxury of using an actual editor, a human editor. So luckily I don't have to use either tool, at least not for that.
Yeah, companies like Grammarly and stuff are probably trying to figure out how to incorporate, because I know there's been a slew of companies suddenly that are using AI to help in one way or another. It's not just chat. I mean, there's things that are helping for design and code and, you name it. Yeah, it seems like there's something popping out every day. It's unbelievable. In
Yes.
fact, I was being shown an experiment earlier where Adobe, yeah, it's you one of my people had cropped me out of an image, okay, and then they literally wrote into the interface and stuff what they wanted to do. So they cropped me out, and he wrote in like, put a parrot on my shoulder, and it pulled a parrot and threw it on my shoulder and stuff, and that's it. It wasn't go find the parrot. It wasn't do anything. It literally, all he did was draw a circle around my shoulder, and that was it. Told it what to do, and that's what it did. Now, did it look great? It was pretty good. It wasn't like it, you would have known that it wasn't totally real. We were looking at another thing that's where you could actually take, so from a content perspective, there's a program out there. I don't remember what it's called, but it was, you could put in all your content, whatever you need, and you can create a training course out of it, and it will give you a human avatar doing all the speaking and stuff. But it's using an AI to interpret. It's taking all of that. You still had to give it the entire script. So, you know, the argument can be made like, okay, use chat to create the AI, the all the content, and then go over to the avatar, let the avatar, and you pick out what type of avatar you want, what kind of speaking voice you want to it, and then it speaks the whole thing for you. And hey, you're done. You don't have to do anything. you know. So, but you look at it and it's like it doesn't look totally real. Of course, voice is very stilted and stuff. So there's going to be, it's not, there's certain things that are just not there yet, but there's stuff coming out left and right. Like say chat's gotten all of the really the hype, but there's a lot of people that are either tying into, like Microsoft is, a big funder of chat GPT and stuff, and OpenAI. So they put a lot of money behind it. They're incorporating it into Bing. It's going to be a lot. And of course, Google's got its own thing. Everybody's got something, it seems. And it's weird on how fast it came on, because it was like one day there was nothing. Now suddenly there's everything. Yeah. I mean, what's your kind of like perspective on that, where it seemed to be like this overnight? Oh my God, really?
I don't mind the overnight enthusiasm. What I think is weirder is the overnight experts. Within
Mm,
a week or two of Chat GPT coming on the scene, I was seeing a lot of people on LinkedIn that had just changed their titles and were literally advertising that they were AI content experts or prompt engineers or what have you. And this was when it was so new, like nobody even knew how to
yeah,
properly do anything with it yet. That is weirder to me. You couldn't possibly be an expert because no one is unless they're the person behind the scenes building it, right? And
right.
so that is sort of that false. I don't even know how to phrase it. Are you really operating with integrity with the people that you're serving? If you're saying, "Hey, I'm an AI expert. Come over to me for services. I'm going to help your business," and you're still
Yeah.
winging it and trying to figure it out behind the scenes, right? That's the part that really irks me. I think there were a lot of people. My background is really heavily B2B tech, and so there are people oftentimes that are building and testing behind the scenes for years before we hear about them, and it doesn't mean that they weren't doing something similar. And so I know a few SaaS products who had products that made perfect sense to integrate with ChatGPT when it came out, right? So the
Hmm.
moment AI took over, they just found a few ways they could integrate, and suddenly they had a much more robust feature set inside their SaaS product. That's an awesome use of the tool. And those are the kind of advancements we want to see, right?
Yeah.
There also were products that just didn't get pressed before then. So I think WordTune was actually around before ChatGPT,
Hmm.
and WordTune is very AI based, and it's an incredible tool. But I just don't think that they were getting the press until everybody was looking at AI tools.
Yeah. We'd used, yeah, I'm sure you've heard of Jasper, yeah,
Yeah.
as a, you know, what was Jarvis and stuff. And it was a good assistant tool, but it had limitations and such, and it's still around, but it's one of those that now chat's better at it than that particular program. But I think they're trying to integrate AI, to improve their own stuff too. But yeah, there was tools that already existed. It was, a matter of how good. You make a great point though on the engineers and stuff. Suddenly I've received emails and stuff saying, hey, I can, build this into this and everything. And yeah, how do you become an expert at a system that has not been around that long? And what are you actually an expert at? Because you have the side of integrations and you have the side of just being able to use it really well. So it's like, yeah, how can you actually become an expert that quick at something? Yes, you could use it a lot, but are you, you know, I do think, yeah, you're kind of, I don't know, it does seem a little bit deceptive, because it's just so fast that, you are suddenly that person, so, um, so from a content perspective, what do you think, we know strategy, right? What are other things that you think AI is not really going to be, able to replace? It may be able to assist, but so it either can help, but it still can't replace, or it just can't. It's not going to be any good to really incorporate it all.
I think I've already covered a lot of them, right? But it all really boils down to that human touch and that sense of authenticity. AI is not going to be putting out anything unique, period, because it's working off a specific data set that we
Hmm.
already know about, and it's not able to consider all of the different elements that you could consider. Nobody has the same experiences, knowledge, voice, personality quirks that you have, right? And the
Okay.
same would go for the brand at large. If we're doing our jobs well as content marketers, we're really trying to differentiate a brand and make it very unique. Because what makes something distinct is what makes it stand out head and shoulders above its competitors. The problem comes when we're all trying to blend in. We see this a lot in B2B content. We make fun of buzzwords and generic content because everyone sounds the same. So
Mm.
chat GPT at its worst is just going to perpetuate the same problem, right?
Yeah.
It really cannot replace the unique voice that only you can bring to the conversation.
Yeah. Actually, I did a podcast a few days ago and stuff, and they asked me about that, how it would affect content. One thing I pointed out, which is similar to what you said, is that you're going to get, because of the speed, you're going to get a lot of content. But that's really going to be the downside because you're going to be flooded. The internet is going to be literally, and it already is getting flooded, and it's going to be flooded across industries. So think of like you have different areas of content, keywords that people may target, and stuff like that, and some are high volume, and so they get a lot of competition. It's very hard to rank and stuff, and you get certain pieces that will kind of embed, they'll hold on to their rankings for quite a while. But you're going to get a lot of even the smaller stuff that is suddenly being attacked because I can put out 10 pieces of content to go after this. You could literally have content, people that are using chat say, I'm going to target this, particular keyword or keyword set. Yeah, and I'm going to go at it with like 5 different pieces of content because I can write it all in 10 minutes. But you're going to get, it is all scraping the same thing, because it's what it's, supposedly basically checked the whole internet and said that's its repository of information. So it's going to have that problem of, you're going to get a lot of duplicate. The person that created it is not going to realize that. Yeah. And right now, if you check, to say, is it duplicated? Can I, find it anywhere else on the internet? You're not necessarily going to see it. But 6 months from now, yeah, you're gonna run into not just one, two, you're gonna run into a dozen pieces potentially, of stuff that has been because chat gave it to this person and this person and this person, and they all used it, and it may be slightly different, but there's going to be a lot of it that's really the same. Yeah, so I think that's going to be really a negative. I know Google's like, they don't care. They're like, it's quality content, but nobody's really bringing up the fact that a little bit, fast forward a little bit, you're going to start seeing some people penalized because they don't realize it's already been put out there.
I
Yeah.
completely agree with you. My biggest prediction about all of this is that we are going to be oversaturated with very mediocre content because
Yeah.
it's we already were dealing with a lot of bad content before, and now people can spin it out much faster and at a much higher volume. I'm also going
Hmm.
to say though, I challenge the idea that anyone says it's a quality piece of content, because if you're creating content based on content that only already exists that sounds very similar to what a lot of other people are putting out, you're not putting out quality content. All you're doing is meeting the status quo. You're following the exact same checklist, probably the same subheads, the same
Yeah.
top 10 tips that everybody else is putting in their content. So
Yeah.
how do you expect to actually rank above them and see good results? You're not going to.
That's a really good point because, a lot of listicles or whatever, top 10 this, 15 that, 5 of that, everybody, top 10 tips for 2023, whatever. They, people will of course look at what it was already created, but they have to, because they're looking, they have to figure out ways to differentiate it so that they can actually rank it above. And chat won't do that.
Mhm.
It's just going to copy the stuff. It's going to, whatever I say is given the input, it's going to start creating that same stuff. So, and a lot of people will continue to do those kinds of articles. They'll say, hey, give me top 10 reasons for this. And, it will list them out. And I bet you if you take and look at it, and compare it to some of the stuff for whatever, term you're trying to target, you're going to find some stuff that's very similar already that was actually written not by chat. It was written by a human. That's the source, is those types of articles and stuff. But then the next person's going to do it, and the next person. So you're going to go through the first like 3-4 results, and they're all going to say this, something extremely similar. So Google in its wisdom is always like, we want to give the best experience to the user, like whoever's doing the search and whatnot. And so we want this long form content. We want it to be unique. It's going to have that problem though of eventually it's not going to be that way anymore. It's going to be a lot of duplicated.
Yeah, it's the content marketing version of a Xerox machine. Everything is slowly becoming a copy of a copy of a copy, and it's getting
Yeah.
very dirty.
Yeah. And it was, even, as humans writing it, it was kind of doing that to some degree, depending on what categories you were in, because like I say, everything is like, it's regurgitated. I go check this so I can, this is my source. I'm going to look up this content, because it can be, hard to begin with to be, to be original, depending on what you're trying to write about. So and it can be tough for a human, which has a lot more ability to do so. Chat's going to struggle with that, and other AIs and such, So I think that's like really good. If you're advising a company, okay, what would so they're starting they're saying, hey, we're going to go into this content, we don't do this right now. How would you go in and you would advise them, to if you're going to build a team and you're going to use AI, these are the kind of things that positions you're going to want so kind of like differentiating the roles in a sense. Like you want your content strategist and you want to say, okay, this is the person that should be generating ideas and stuff. And then where would AI have a role? And you would say, okay, for this kind of work, this actual work, this is what I would use. Like it's okay to do these kinds of things. So from a task standpoint, what would you, advise them?
So this actually touches on a mistake I see a lot of startups make. People want to get started with content marketing and they can't afford the high dollar headcount. They're not bringing in a CMO or another marketing leader. And then they now have tools like ChatGPT at their disposal. So they just say, great, I'm going to wing it and just start producing a bunch of content. Now, we've seen this even before AI. If you're producing a bunch of content and it's not based on a strategy, you don't get results,
Right.
which is what happens 9 times out of 10. And then we have these people that say organic doesn't work or SEO is a fraud. We tried content marketing. It was silly. We don't do that. We just invest in paid marketing. It's clearly working for some companies because we're all still here. And there are organizations that are making hundreds of millions of dollars off organic and content marketing every year, right?
Hmm.
So it does work when it's done well. So this is the worst case scenario is we don't have a strategy and we're just using these tools to then produce tons and tons of content for us, right? And we're going to call that a content marketing program. It's not a content marketing program. At the other end of the spectrum, you have people who bring in a strategist and they have this beautiful roadmap, but they don't necessarily have the junior people who can implement, right? Who's going to write it? Who's going to make those videos? Who's going to schedule that on social media? So then you have the opposite problem where you have all of these great ideas, a really beautiful strategy, and you don't have the resources to put it in place. So the sweet spot needs to be somewhere in the middle ground. Even if you don't have the budget for an incredibly robust content marketing program, start with a single channel, right? Make sure that you have a preliminary strategy there and start implementing a content marketing program. You can always add additional channels or assets. You can increase your cadence and your volume as you go. You've got to have that starting point. So if you've ever read the book Essentialism, Greg McKeown has this great graphic where it shows someone really sort of diluting their energy. So there's kind of like a hub and there's all of these different energy sources going out in different directions. This is what a lot of people do with content marketing. We're going to try to do a newsletter, a blog, a YouTube channel. We're going to be on every form of social media. and then they're not seeing traction, right? It's better if you take all of your energy and you invest it in a single channel or two and consolidate your efforts. And that's how you get those really early wins in content marketing. So if you're going to leverage the tools, that's what you need to look at. One, you need to have a strategy that you're working off of that a robot did not make for you, because the robot doesn't know your business. Human beings
Yeah.
know your business, right? And then you look at how you can leverage your tech stack. And yes, AI is now part of your tech stack to really support the implementation and the rollout of that strategy. So I encourage people to think of it that way too. Everyone acts like it's this new, different thing. We've done this time and time again for years, right? We have SEO tools, we have marketing automation tools, we have social media schedulers. Like, remember when we all had to
Yeah.
manually schedule,
Yeah. Right.
right? Or just remember to tweet 5, 10 times a day because you couldn't
Hmm.
schedule it. So every time there's been an innovation, we've changed our MarTech stack. This is just one more thing to add to your MarTech stack.
Got it. Okay. Well, this has been great. I think, learned a lot. I know I picked up a few things. Um, Melissa, how would people get a hold of you? If they want to contact you for content marketing.
I am very active on LinkedIn, so definitely follow me there. I am sharing content marketing and leadership tips, especially for startups, every single day. You can visit my website, which is thecontent.market. There's a ton of information on there, and there's also a contact form.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm Cash Miller, your host. This has been the Marketing Masters, the Agency Power Show, and thank you very much for joining us today.